Hello and welcome to Barcelona. It's time for round 11 of MotoGP in 2023. And you join us 2 weeks on from Pecco Bagnaia, utterly dominating proceedings at the Red Bull Ring. Pole position, sprint win and Grand Prix win. He extends his championship lead out to 62 points and also denied Simon Crafar of a steak and a nice bottle of wine as well in doing so. KTM's home round, well, it didn't go exactly as they would have liked, but 2 second-place finishes for Brad Binder saw him close in just a little bit to the guys second and third in the championship. It is still Jorge Martin sat second and Marco Bezzecchi in third. Hello, welcome along to the preview. Good to have you with us. As always, Jack Appleyard and Simon alongside me. Inside there's only one place to start, the world champion Pecco Bagnaia. Utter brilliance from him in Austria, and he's on a run at the moment where it's hard to see when it's going to come to an end.
Yes, and you were right about me losing out on the bet for the steak and the red wine. I was wrong, so I deserved to lose, out on that. I really thought that KTM were closer, with a stop-start circuit, but it came down a lot to getting the grip there, with that different construction rear tyre to handle the punishment and the temperature. It's the same tyre they use in Thailand, for example, for the same reason. And Ducati just did it better, And that's not taking anything away from this man, because there's lots of other riders. Well, there's another 3 that are identical Ducatis out there, and lots of others, another 4 that are on track that are very close. But he's the only one to put the weekend together and the race and every lap of the race like that. He was stunning. He's doing exactly what Ducati hoped he would do. You can see how pleased they are. And that combination of, I said it actually in Parc Ferme to Pecco after the race, that it's, the refinement of both Pecco and the Ducati are coming together at the same time and looking unbeatable. I don't know if he appreciated it. I think riders, and egos want to take the credit, and that's nothing negative to him. Lovely guy, just how riders are and have to be. But it's how I see it. The machine and the rider are really refining, at the same time, and it's a worry for everyone else.
As you say, is it? Well, obviously Ducati are in supreme form at the moment, just looking at the results they've had. But looking at that race there, KTM was second with Brad Binder, 5 and a bit seconds behind. Not a million miles away, but then the bikes third, fourth and fifth were last year's Ducatis. It seems to be, at this present moment, over the past couple of weekends, obviously Jorge Martin was very strong at Sachsenring, but Pecco's the one that is more consistently getting the absolute maximum out of this year's Ducati.
We haven't spoken about that, and I've got to give you credit. That's a really good point, because I've been thinking the same the last couple of weeks, in that the Ducati GP23 that Pramac and the factory team have is slightly different, and it's coming out that it's a little bit more difficult to stop, like as in get the braking feeling. And it seems like Pecco is the only one that's really nailed it and gelled with the bike. I've got to say, I feel sorry for Enea, because he hasn't had the same time on the bike to figure this new bike out. But Pecco's proving it can be done. So
absolutely. The scenes of last year, we'll come to that in a moment. Of course, a lot of talk about what Aleix Espargaro, who could forget, did on the last lap of last year's Grand Prix. But I want to, if we can, Simon, just touch on a little bit of 2024 news. Firstly, with Marco Bezzecchi, the man that we thought could be teammating this man next year. He did have the offer, we know that. Both Ducati and Marco himself said that there was the offer on the table to go for the full factory 2024 bike with Pramac next year. He's opted not to take that, instead to jump on the bike that Pecco Bagnaia is currently riding, a 1-year-old bike next year, and staying with the VR46 squad. Did that come as a surprise to you at all?
From a pure rider performance point of view, it did. I thought it was a no-brainer, but I think that it goes to show that VR46, and their Mooney sponsorship, and that is very important to them. They think more important. until he's offered the factory ride. So, obviously, Marco is doing something, in my mind, loyal, repaying the loyalty to him. It's his crew, his team, and they're the ones that have given him the opportunity, and he's repaying that by staying with them, because he's one of the sought-after riders. I'm sure that both the team and the sponsorship, the management, the whole lot will hurt if he's lost. And one more thing I'd like to throw in there that came into my mind is, I've noticed over the last couple of years, there's some real rivalry between those Italian teams with Ducatis, Everyone wants to be for example, Pramac, and I'm sure my gut feeling is there's something of this involved in it. And good on Marco for repaying the people that have given him the opportunity. But I'm sure it'll all change when the red team call him up, and that's fair enough.
That, of course, does open up the door to someone to fill the seat of Johann Zarco. He's moving on to LCR Honda.
What a seat as well. What a ride.
Plum seats. And it looks as though Paddock Talk and Paolo Ciabatti and Gigi Dell'Igna both saying over recent days that Franco Morbidelli, the man that looks most likely to jump on board that bike next season. The both of them confirming that talks are continuing and progressing. We'll talk Morbidelli later on when we get some news, maybe this time next week, who knows.
What an opportunity. Hope he does get it.
Massive for him, but let's talk about what this man has up against him next year. What a challenge, moving from Ducati to LCR Honda. I think he's well aware it doesn't need neither me nor you to tell him that it's going to be a real challenge to tackle there, but is he up for the job? Can he make a difference?
Well, you can look at it from a lot of different points of view. When this man jumped from the Yamaha, with a sweet handling competitive Yamaha at that time, jumped on the KTM, it couldn't have gone much worse, both for Johan and the team, it fell apart very quickly. And to take on the same sort of project, you could look at it as like, are you sure? But I listened to his debriefs, and when he was at the end of every day, and he was asked this, and he said, it's also good for your ego when you have a manufacturer that wants you. So they've come to him. They really want him. They have seen what he's done at Ducati, and he is the guy normally that gets the first development stuff at race weekends. They give him or Jorge Martin, but it's been Johan for a lot of years, that he gets the first new parts and shakes them down before they move on to the factory. That's what they'll want him to do, I imagine, and he's good at it. I hope it goes well for him. It's going to be a big challenge. At the same time, you've got to look at it from a business point of view, in that if Ducati were offering him apparently 1 year to stay on, and he's like, I've got the energy for 2. Honda were obviously offering 2 years and hopefully a wheelbarrow full of cash, and I wish him luck.
Absolutely, yeah. 2-year deal for Johann Zarco, so he'll be on the MotoGP grid in 2024 and 2025, with apparently the option of extending it out for a 3rd year as well. But, Alex Rins had a 2-year deal as well, and he's left after 1. So that is supposed to be the case, but who knows in MotoGP nowadays.
Alex has had an option in there that if he got offered a factory ride, he could leave. So it was a little... And he did.
The asterisk.
Very clever.
Was taken up. Right, let's talk this weekend then. That's all the 2024 rider market news. No other news at the moment. It looks as though the big seats available, as we said, that Pramac Ducati one that Johann Zarco has vacated. No real news as to who's going to take potentially the Gresini seat that Fabio Di Giannantonio may well move on from. And of course, there's the continuing KTM saga of 5 riders, 4 bikes. We're still yet to have a clearer picture as to what the makeup of their lineup will be for next year. So until we get answers, let's focus on this weekend and start with KTM. We've touched on Bagnaia and just how impressive he was. KTM were the closest to him. This is a circuit that usually is low grip, a place where looking after the tyres is quite important. Is this a place where KTM can close the gap even further?
Well, I would have said so before Austria. I've just got to ride the track a couple of hours ago, and it reminded me of that it has pretty much everything in there. It has fast turns, slow turns, massive long straight with a fast exit onto it, so really high speed, super hard braking in a couple of places. So it's quite complete, but the riders say low grip. Yes, it's a few years old, the surface. It's in very good condition still, meaning not bumps, at least on the stock bike. It felt beautiful. But it torches the right-hand side of the rear tyre. And every year here, it comes down to who not only can be fast, but can manage the life of that rear tyre on the right-hand side. And last week, it was clear that Ducati had a good advantage in that area. So there's nothing that the KTM guys could do to compete, when it came down to that tyre, the critical stage of the race. They couldn't compete. So I hope that KTM can close it so we can have a closer race. But at the moment, I'm worried.
I mean, Brad looked after that rear tyre. His teammate, this man right here, Jack Miller, did not. Was up in third, as we saw in the rewinds then, in the opening stages, just behind his teammate. Eventually was the last KTM across the line in 16th. He was promoted up to 15th with a penalty for Pol Espargaro. But, wow, what a disastrous day it was for Jack Miller. I mean, from listening to what he had to say afterwards, do we have any indication other than the rear tyre as to why he dropped so rapidly through the field?
Yeah, I mean, he was obviously, like I was alluding to, lacking rear grip, He was also talking about it spinning like he was in the wet in a straight line. But this could be so many different things, In this technical world, there is a chassis setup, but also electronics and power delivery and torque, and there is so much in getting the rear tyre to the end because they got too much horsepower and torque for these tiny motorcycles with massive power. It's a real challenge to get it there. So I don't know. They're going to have a better idea, and I just hope they can fix it or at least get a little bit closer. But Brad was the only one even within a shout, wasn't he? So
we saw those images of Jack there post-race. First time I've seen them, and obvious frustration and disappointment on his face. Let's see if he can turn it around this weekend. I guess the only saving grace for Jack is the fact that the forecast does look as though it's going to be pretty wet and wild this weekend. Thunderstorms apparently coming in both Saturday and Sunday, and we know how good Jack is once...
Flag to flags.
Yeah, once the weather comes down and you have to close your eyes, Jack is one of the best out there. In terms of riders or teams or factories, shall we say, that certainly haven't had the best luck when it comes to the wet. Aprilia stand out, so could well be a difficult weekend for them. Again, a circuit you would expect them to be quite competitive at, given what we saw last year.
I would say definitely that Aprilia should be competitive here. There's not a lot of slow turns leading onto long straights. There basically isn't. It's quite flowing, and that's what the Aprilia does well, is flow, corner speed. I've said before, and I'll say it again, I think they are leading that race, where the bike turning and basically the handling, the way they've sorted the aero, the ground effects, the chassis, they've done an amazing job. That's their strong point. And last year they were competitive as well, and I think they've improved a little bit in that area again. Let's hope they can manage that tyre life, because if they do, it's not only this man on screen, it's not only his teammate Maverick, who was flying in Austria. His starts blew it, but also Miguel. Miguel's won here before, and his bike is the bike that was should have been on the podium here last year. So.
Yeah, was on pole position as well. Aleix Espargaro setting a brilliant lap on Saturday, this time last year in a UCA. Should have finished the race in second, eventually coming across the line outside of the podium places. You mentioned Maverick there. His pace in Austria was phenomenal.
Blinding.
It should have been 2 podium finishes, but it was the starts that cost him. The thing that stood out for me, Simon, I'd be interested, I'm sure we'll get the opportunity to speak with Paolo Bonora or Massimo Rivola to get their thoughts
I
on
planned
it.
that. Yeah.
He was in one side of me has a lot of credit and admiration for Maverick that he can nearly always see the positives in difficult situations. But I did prod him on Sunday night saying, you must be frustrated to not walk away from a weekend when you've looked so strong without anything to show for it. I mean, what do you make of... And he just said, well, we'll keep on working. What else can I do? I mean, what else can he do? Because he blaming the start, saying that it's an issue with the Aprilia, but looking at the other riders, I mean, they're not the quickest off the line, but certainly not anywhere near like Maverick.
Yeah, I'll be honest, I was very frustrated on Sunday night with Maverick. I said it on the after the flag show. I've since spoken with some of the team and the team members that really do know, and they are still supportive of him, saying, yeah, it was some of our fault, and we couldn't believe how good Maverick was there, meaning he was exceptional, like should have had pole, like blew a lap and was on pole position speed anyway, but the way he handled the bike in those stop-start turns is they've seen on the data like nobody else has ever managed to do on the Aprilia. Really? So but we all know it. He's got something special. But still, I'm frustrated that he's not getting that potential, realising what it on Sunday. It drives me crazy. I don't know how the team don't explode, but they're not. They're still hopeful. Look, I genuinely want him to do it, but it's starting to feel like deja vu again, meaning... Yeah. And the other thing you said is he's not frustrated about the lap. Can you imagine if Brad had blown the start? He'd be like, lost an opportunity. And I think races need that, that drive, that hunger, that determination to get it across the line in the position it should. And I'm starting to doubt Maverick has that, and I really want him to prove me wrong because he's brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely. It'd be an interesting one to speak to the Aprilia managers over the course of the weekend, because similar to you, as I said, part of me, admiration for someone to have the ability to always look at the positives in life. I think that's a great trait to have, but you need to have that dog inside of you that is bitterly disappointed not to have maximised what was out there for you. Talking of two men that normally do maximise what's put out in front of them, Fabio Quartararo, Marc Marquez. This is a circuit that they've had so much success at. I mean, firstly, can you believe, Simon, 12 months ago, Fabio won the race here by 6 seconds? How long ago does that feel? And the chances of that happening this weekend, pretty slim.
Well, going on, recent form, you just couldn't imagine either of them being within a shout of victory, even podium. I hope I'm wrong, but I just can't imagine it, because no matter the style of circuit recently, it just hasn't, they haven't been able to be competitive. That's not fully true about Fabio on Sundays. He's been pretty strong, but again, the difficulty of using the Yamaha in the battle against the V4s, I think he suffers from the bad grid position, So, no, I don't hold out hope of either of them being on the podium, but isn't that amazing? 12 months ago, he just cleaned up. Yeah. So, yeah. Times change quickly in MotoGP.
Absolutely. Things do change very quick indeed. Right. I think it's about time then that we pass over to Matthew Burt to get our first thoughts ahead of the weekend for MotoGP stars coming your way. The world champion Pecco Bagnaia, his two closest title contenders, Marco Bezzecchi and Jorge Martin, plus Brad Binder. It's the top four in the championship, and they're all going to be previewing the Monster Energy Catalan Grand Prix.